Ladies and gentlemen, how do? What are we up to today? We're back on the Steve Parrish F1 bike. This was built by Dave Johnson, and we're getting a little bit closer today. What I'm doing specifically is, we had, if you recall, this rear sprocket carrier, cush drive carrier that locates in the diamag is cracked with the lugs, and here's really poor state. So Anthony Ambler from Ambler Engineering up near Carlisle machined me a new part. So I've fitted that to the wheel now. That's actually in the wheel. A couple of things before I go talk about anything else. Obviously, not obviously, but very often a lot of race bikes and some road bikes are double row bearings on the drive side, on the sprocket side. That's not unusual, okay? So that's why it's got such a deep recess in here. That's fitted in the wheel. Let's have a look at the drive system. So what we have, just bear with me a second, I should get more organised. Right, so this is the actual sprocket carrier stroke cush drive, which screws up, which bolts up to a new part I've had made. Clearly Dave Johnson decided he was going to make his own screws for the back, which is what he's done. They are clearly been hex-headed high tensile bolts because they've got to fit in here. You haven't got all the space. So he's ground those down and machined in slots so they can sit in there. You could say, well, why didn't you use, a hex-headed bolt? Well, Dave knew far more than I will ever know. But if you just look at the depth of that, you wouldn't be able to put your key in or your tool to tighten that up. So I think that speaks for itself, really. It would have been machined to such a position that you wouldn't have been able to tighten them up correctly. Right, so that's that bit. There's that to go onto the wheel. Before we go any further, just something to note. When the bike came with a lot of spurs, good selection of spurs, we've got some shims and packer plates, so we can use these on here to move the sprocket around on the back to get the chain alignment right in relation to the front sprocket, which is quite handy. So we'll take some note of that when we're putting that back together. One other element is I'm probably going to put a larger rear sprocket on. That's a 40, larger diameter, extra teeth, just to lower the overall gearing a little bit so the bike's a bit more civilized when it gets used, because obviously we're not going to be worrying about top speed. We'd have to make it a little bit more easy to get off the line, a little bit more civilized when we get the bike out this year. Okay, so I'll change that. We'll sort these bolts out. All the original bolts will go back. You know me, all the original nuts, bolts, screws will go back. If they clean these up and they need replating, rezinking, that's what I'll do. So all the original parts go back on. Now, so Dave Johnson built this bike. Harris did the frame, but Dave Johnson clearly had a major part to play in it because they'd never built one for RD500 engine before. So this was built by Harris, but the frame was in conjunction with Dave Johnson. That's clearly the case. This was the first one of the type. I know they made a Decorite one for the Rotax engine and an aluminium frame. From 2 miles away it looks similar, but it's not. There's just some similarities, that's all. So this was the first one of the line, if you like. They did subsequently make some more. This frame's not stamped up. There's no frame number on that. That's not uncommon for race bikes. They did subsequently make, I think, about another 9 frame kits. What I will say about those is they're not the same as this. I've been fortunate enough to find a few images on internet, had a good look. Again, there are similarities, but they're not the same. The difference under the back of the tank, where the exhaust come through, a few other areas, and another main area before we go is chain adjusters. Now, all the images I've seen of other frames and most of the Harris bikes, the adjuster for the chain has been an eccentric, but on this one it has an adjusting bolt in and a sliding spindle. So I can see these. I mean, look, they're a lovely piece of work on their own then. So they go in here, you have your bolt in there with a lock nut on, they're one off as well. They're stains, well, I think the titanium actually. I'm just cleaning those up, ready to go back in. So yeah, that's a major difference that to virtually every other Harris I've seen. So I think that's probably Dave Johnson's influence and a few other parts. Another thing that passed my mind was at the end of each lug here, we have 4 holes in there, and they're quite deep. I wondered whether they had at the time, and I might be able to talk to Steve Parrish about it, see if he can recall, a stand with 4 prongs on for each side for lifting the bike up. Now, it does have a hollow spindle, so it has the conventional stand, you know, where you put you lift the bike up and you put the pin through, and then you can rock it off the stand and lift the stand up at the back, and I'll be secure with something to the seat bolt. So I just wondered whether they were for a stand so you could easily get the wheel out at a race meeting to change your tyres, change your wheels, whatever you had to do, because they're deep enough. Okay, so maybe that's what these are for. Yeah, I'll keep researching that bit. But that's where we are. I'm ready to get the rear wheel back in. We'll look at getting a chain sorted for it early next week. At that point, I'm getting very close to starting the bike up, you know, and some of you might say, and so you should be. It's taken a long time. I want it to be done right. We've had the right people making the few odd parts I've needed. I spent time to make sure I did Dave Johnson justice, really, in what he did. I didn't start changing nuts, bolts, screws. It would have been so easy to do that. But I have retained everything on there, you know. I do my own zinc plating, so anything's needed zinking, I've done that. That's going back on. You've probably seen my video about the exhaust silencer tube. They're all important to me to get right. I want this to be a true reflection of what Dave built for Stavros Parrish to race in 1985. And let's see if we can get this bike out on the track this year. Right, enough waffle, Chris. I'm going to leave you all to it. Enjoy the rest of your day. Check me out on YouTube. There's other videos on there as well of other bikes I'm working on. Yeah, be lucky, everyone, and most of all, take care.